Welcome to Broadcast Map, the show that covers the world of broadcasting, the Canadian media landscape, sports media, the show's favorite sports teams, as well as news and politics. Here's your host, Ali Musa.
Good afternoon on Tuesday, May 20th, 2025. And we are doing this NHL and Maple Leafs exit show from the playoffs. I am joined by none other than Ryan Paton, host of the Pucks and 7 podcast. Check that out on YouTube at Pucks and 7. Ryan, thank you so much for taking some time to join me today.
Yeah, it's an absolute pleasure. I wish it was on better terms when it comes to the Maple Leafs, but Ali, as you know, and I know we're going to talk about this, we've seen this time and time again. So really glad to be here, and let's get going.
Absolutely. So I want to start by, what were your initial thoughts here when this happened, especially when we reached Game 5, where they they got beaten, and then Game 7 was a repeat. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I joked when I was doing a show yesterday that they played two game fives. They played one in Game 5, and they played the same game in Game 7. So look, when you go up 2-0 in the series to the defending champions, then you lose 2 in a row, and all of a sudden the series is now down to a best of 3. For Game 5, going back home, that was a game that you needed to come out and play, probably the best game that you had in the previous 4. There was no excuses for that. You're back on home ice. You have home ice advantage for a reason. You had more points over the course of the season than Florida did. And then they laid an absolute egg. I was absolutely dumbfounded by how poorly they played as a group. And I had been preaching, and I'm sure you and I talked about this at some point over the course of the season. I was preaching that this team is different. And they showed me in Game 5 that they're still not very different. There's this quote that I saw, and to me this sums up, and again, we'll get to Game 7 second too, but this sums up the team in a nutshell, is you can have great ingredients, but you can't cook with an oven that doesn't ignite. And in Game 5, the oven did not ignite. In Game 7, the oven did not ignite. In Game 6, it did, a little bit, enough to get them through to Game 7, but then they were done. And it's the same thing over and over again. So I was absolutely shocked. And then, Ali, I was even more shocked that the same thing could happen in the span of 3 games that happened in Game 7 that went on in Game 5. I could not believe the same type of performance occurred in Game 7 in the elimination game to Florida.
No, and I feel like a lot of it here is that it's like now they didn't, they added a couple of pieces. Okay, they added Carlo and Lawton, not to be confused with Laughlin, but yes.
Yeah.
Almost did it again too, but
Yeah.
But I don't know if that proved to be, it didn't look like that it made a difference here. Now we have to sort of start asking the question here. Of the 3 expiring contracts here, Marner, Tavares, and Brendan Shanahan, are we going to, in your mind, are we expecting it? Do we feel that there will be a change on that end? I hope so, but I don't know.
2 of the 3, I am fully convinced will be gone. And 2 of the 3 are Mitch Marner and Brendan Shanahan. When Keith Pelley was brought in last year to kind of oversee MLSC, everything like that, that was a big thing. That was a big step. And I do believe that the timing of that was significant, knowing that Brendan Shanahan was into his last year of his contract. And let's face it, the players on the ice are the ones that dictate who's going to win the hockey game. The coach behind the bench helps with that. The general manager, signs off on trades, puts things in place. He tries to build for the coach, for the team, the best team that he possibly can. But this starts with Brendan Shanahan, and I believe it should end now and that he is going to go. I think there's a lot of things too we can go into with Brendan Shanahan. I don't know him
Go ahead.
personally.
Let's do it.
I feel that he's been untouchable for a very long time in Toronto. And I'm not taking anything away from what he has done. It's easy for me and you to sit here and say, oh, he shouldn't have signed off on this and he shouldn't have signed off on that. And he had the final say in this and whatever. I know 2 years ago, before Mitch Marner's no move clause kicked in his contract, the Leafs, and I think at that point, the Leafs knew Marner's ship had sailed. The Leafs were exploring the idea of trading him to have some sort of leverage before the new no move clause kicked in. Brendan Shanahan vetoed that. He said, no, we're not doing that. And then 2 months after that, Kyle Dubas was relieved of his duties.
Yep.
And now we know the mess that the Leafs are in with Mitch Marner. So I think there's been a lot of things. I think there's been a lot of ego involved with Brendan Shanahan in this whole thing. Now, as for Mitch Marner, I believe the ship has sailed, and I believe it did months ago. I would be absolutely shocked if he signs back in Toronto. When they approached him over the course of the season to want to negotiate a contract, he and his agent, and I guess the Leafs said, no, we're not going to do that. Well, that's red flag number one. The second red flag was when they went to him at the deadline and said, can you waive your no move so we can trade you for Mikko Rantanen, which, who knows, Ali, if that did happen and if Mitch Marner said yes, maybe we'd be talking today with the Leafs about to play game one against Carolina.
Yeah.
And guess who? Against Mitch Marner, right? I mean, you think about that for a second. So that was red flag number two. I think the time for him is gone. The amount of points he puts over the season is great, but he's been very quiet in the playoffs. And also as well, the Leafs are not going to give him 13 and a half, 14 and a half, whatever contract he's going to get. The Leafs aren't going to do that. So I believe that he's out. I believe Shanahan's out. I believe the only way that John Tavares comes back is on a deal that will pay him almost half less than what he had before. He was making 11. I believe that they should offer him a 3-year contract at 18. That gives an AAV of 6. So you go down almost 50%. But if John Tavares wants to win the Stanley Cup with Toronto, which he does, he made that quite clear at the end of Game 7. He's like, I want to be here. I do not see him playing anywhere else. But if he wants to do that, and he knows now the money's coming off the books and the Leafs need to make some other moves to get this team over the top, I firmly believe that he will say, fine, I don't need the money. I want to play here. I want to finish what I came here to certainly to start, and that's winning the cup, and I will sign for less. If it does happen, I don't know. But to answer your question, Shanahan, I believe, is gone. Marner is gone. John Tavares will come back.
Yeah, that's a very fair sort of thing. I think I'd be okay with that as well because, if he wants to be here, he should be, like Tavares, he should be given the opportunity to be here as well.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. Because, and he has.
No, go ahead.
Not saying that Mitch Marner didn't have the passion. You know what? I'm going to change that. Mitch Marner didn't have the passion. He doesn't have the passion, doesn't have the heart in the postseason. And so many people can say, oh, it's the playoffs, it's this and this. I'm tired of that. If you are going to command a contract that is in excess of 13 and a half, and you are basically saying to the world that you are an elite player, you may have a couple of games off, but you do not disappear. And he's disappeared. You can say that about Auston Matthews. You can say that about William Nylander. Yes, I understand, but we're not talking about them. So I think with John Tavares, it's different. He was grinding. It's not like he's 25 anymore. He's getting up there in age, but he still has the passion, the desire, the want, and the need to get it done in Toronto. And that is, I think, a huge difference between him and Mitch Marner.
Yeah, and you probably saw this in the newsletter that as well. You may have seen it, that why are and we will tackle this question, why are the Buffalo Sabres rumored to be interested in Marner?
Yeah, I don't know. I'll answer it by throwing it back to you.
Please.
In a different question.
Okay.
Why would Mitch Marner go to Buffalo? Mitch Marner would... The Buffalo Sabres, yes, they have some pieces in place.
Yep.
Yes. Their blueprint that they follow every season is get off to a decent start and then play terribly for most of the year and then end the season on a kind of a good note. And then that teases the fan base saying, you know what? Hey, we ended the season. We actually have stuff to build on here and we're not that bad. Well, the fact is you're not there yet. And you, I believe, are a little ways to go. So I do not believe that if Mitch Marner was offered a contract of, say they offer him 14, which is astronomical. I don't believe Mitch Marner's worth that, but whatever. Say they offer him that, like Mitch Marner coming back to Toronto in September and October, I'd be shocked if he says yes to Buffalo. So I don't know. I think every team, if they have the money, will throw something at him. And this will come down to him choosing, do I want to go to a team that is a contender right now? Do I want to go to a team that maybe will be a contender in a year, 2 years? I don't know. I don't see Buffalo as a real destination point for Mitch Marner.
No, I don't either. I really don't.
Yeah.
Because see, Buffalo, if you look at it, they haven't been really good, right? They sort of have had their sort of streaks, but they're not a playoff team at this point. They haven't really been a playoff team.
No, and every time, and it's a great point, when you bring up the narrative of are they a playoff team, you have to think, okay, if they are a playoff team, then all the teams that made the postseason this year in the East, of the 8 teams, then one team has to not be a playoff team next year. And I don't see, to be honest, a lot of the teams that made it this season bowing out next year. I think Detroit will be better. I do believe Montreal, yes, they got in, but I think they will be better. I think they'll also be back in the postseason. So
Ottawa
if one
too.
goes in, Ottawa too. If one goes in, if Buffalo gets in, that means one team who made it this season. And for example, the Rangers, do you think the Rangers are not going to make it in? If they don't make it in next season like they did this year, that would be unbelievable, even more so than the fact that they didn't make it in the postseason in 24-25. So yes, they are not relatively. Yes, they're trending in the right direction, but I think they have a ways to go.
Yeah. And that, I mean, yeah, that's it. But see, I mean, if Buffalo was a playoff team,
Mm-hmm.
they would have, in my opinion, they would have kept Dylan Cousins.
Yeah, that was a great point. That was a big one. I mean, it was a great pickup for Ottawa in that deal.
Mm-hmm.
But that is one player. I think with Buffalo, one of the issues that they've had, and maybe by trading Cousins was to try to get out of this thing, is that it was almost an embarrassment of riches. They have too much talent on the back end. You have Rasmus Dahlin and Owen Power to name just two. Bowen Byram as well. Those are 3 players that really you don't find on many teams in the league all on the same club. If you have 1 or 2 of them on the same club, that's a bit different. So when they made that move, that was potentially saying, well, we know we're not going to be able to let's see what we can get for him and build toward next season. So I'm with you. Again, this all comes down to where Mitch is going to go and what is the most attractive team for him. I think the Pittsburgh Penguins are a team that could attract him. Kyle Dubas is there. Get a chance to play with Sidney Crosby. Kenny Malkin's time's coming to an end. I know Pittsburgh didn't make it in this year and last year, but they're going to be offering, I think Dubas will go heavy on him to try to offer him as much money as he possibly can.
Yeah, and then they let go of Mike Sullivan as well, who is down with the Rangers.
Yeah, a lot of changes, man. So do you know what the average... when Sullivan was let go, the average shelf life of a head coach in the NHL was 1.98 years. Under 2 years. That is the average of a tenure for a head coach in the league. And I think I'm correct in this. In the last year and a half, of the 32 teams, 16, I think maybe more now, but 16 for sure, they had changed coaches. So half the league in a year and a half changed the head coach behind the bench, which I think is extraordinary.
Yes, yeah, exactly, yeah. Now, I want to also, we talk about here now, I want to sort of get your thoughts here on the playoff series that are currently happening, that will be happening. But first, before we do that, I want to talk about the Jets with you. And what were and you know what? And of course they had a very emotional game on Saturday. I was surprised Mark Scheifele actually played in the game there with his dad's passing. And like, what were your what I mean? Do you feel like, did he play because he wanted to give the team an opportunity to win?
I think he did. I don't think that Mark Scheifele would have not played if he thought that he would be a deterrent to the club. Um, his family wanted him to. He said that his dad would have wanted him to, and he scored a goal. I know that he took the penalty late in the third and led to the OT winner for Dallas in that game, but he scored a goal. I thought he looked incredible based on what had happened to him and finding out that his dad suddenly passed away.
Mm-hmm.
So I do believe that that was the right thing for him to do and the right move for the Jets to welcome him back into that lineup for him to play with all that emotion. I really do. I don't think the outcome of the game would, well, look, the outcome of the game was already determined before it even started, but I don't think that the outcome would have been different. And the Jets, say for example, they would have lost 4-0 or something like that if Mark Scheifele did not play. I just think that it was based on emotion, and I thought he did a heck of a job.
Yeah, I did too. I listened to that game actually, and it was kind of nice to. It was interesting just to see, that piece, and I was actually listening to the Jets broadcast actually.
Yeah, yeah. It's too it's unfortunate for the Winnipeg Jets that
Mm-hmm.
they and I don't, it's not a curse, people say, winning the President's Trophy, but not a lot of teams have gone on to win the Stanley Cup that have come first in the league overall. But I mean, they had some issues against St. Louis. They had issues against Dallas. Hats off to Dallas. Stars are an incredible hockey team. They're very well built. The Rantanen deal with Carolina certainly is one of the best, I think, at the deadline that Jim Nill did in the history of Dallas. But there were mistakes that Winnipeg made in both those series, and it's too bad because they're a very good hockey team.
They are. I mean, do you see them sticking around in Winnipeg long term? In your opinion?
You mean staying in Winnipeg
In
as a
Winnipeg,
franchise?
yeah.
That's a very good question, and I'll be fully transparent. I have not even thought about that. So my answer would be I do believe that at this point it is something that is sustainable. With the way that the Jets have been playing and how they're built and the team that they have on the ice, the Winnipeg Jets hockey is big in Winnipeg. So the more that that continues to trend in the direction that it's trending, the fans will show up. You saw every home game that they had. They had five against St. Louis, and they had what, they had four or five against the Dallas Stars. It was a whiteout. It was a beautiful thing. So yeah, I think that the Canadian teams, not just Winnipeg. I mean, Toronto's never going to be an issue. Neither is Montreal, and outside of that, who knows? But I think all the Canadian teams are fine at this point.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and yeah, I think it's good. You see, I think I think the difference is though too that we were talking about the Sabres a minute ago, and like.
Mhm.
Because I think because you and I are NHL fans,
Yeah.
and we follow the league and the games the way we do, I think we are sort of in a mindset of that, we like to see how all the teams are doing and keep up and try to keep up as much as we can with how they're all doing. And I think it's different and I think which I think it's different from, say, the average fan. Most people are just fans of their team, and they don't pay attention to how the others do. Where I think I always like to pay attention to how the others' teams are doing too.
Yeah, no, that's a great thing that you brought up. And Commissioner Gary Bettman has been very adamant about how happy he is with the teams in Canada.
Yeah.
He's not looking at expanding into Canada again. I certainly would love, and I don't know if this is ever going to happen. I'd like to see it in my lifetime, a team back in Quebec. The Quebec and Montreal rivalry
Oh, in
back then
Quebec City.
yeah, in Quebec City.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just think that that would be something that would work. But again, Gary is adamant about expanding more so into the United States. And with that being said, don't be surprised, Ali, if by what are we at 2025?
Mm-hmm.
Don't be surprised that by 20 let's just say 2032, let's just say 7 years from now,
Yeah.
that we may not have 2, 3, maybe 4 more expansion teams in the NHL. And it could be a 36-team league a lot sooner than later.
Yeah. So what about your picks on the your like I'm not really a big prediction guy, but we can sort of lay out our sort of things.
Yeah, sure. What do you want to start with? Want to start with Dallas and Edmonton? You want to start with that one?
Yeah, let's start with Dallas and Edmonton. Yeah.
Okay,
So
let's do Dallas Edmonton. So I'm going to go.
And how many games?
Yeah, I'll tell you my pick and how many games, then I'll tell you the reason why.
Okay.
So I've got Dallas in 7. I have this going the distance. I originally thought it was 6, but I think part of me wants to see this go 7 just because the two teams are awesome. I think Dallas, the old adage is it comes down to goaltending, and I believe that Dallas, not I believe it is true, that Dallas has the edge with Jake Ottinger in goal. I am still not sold on Stu Skinner, even though he's had a good few games. Calvin Pickard took his place in goal, then Edmonton went off, then Pickard got hurt. He could come back. Ekholm is set to come back as well for Edmonton, so they're getting reinforcements back. You can't go against Edmonton because of 97 and 29. With McDavid and Draisaitl, they always have a chance. And their depth is very good. I believe I have this correct. They played LA in the first round, and then they played Vegas. So in the 2 series, they have outscored the opposition 17-9 at 5-on-5 without McDavid and Draisaitl on the ice. So that says to me that this team is deep. Vander Kane's great. Corey Perry always shows up on Stanley Cup teams, and guess what? He's 4 wins away from getting again to another Stanley Cup. So they have the depth, but I just think the way that Dallas is constructed, they have depth as well. Mikko Rantanen is 2 teams haven't been able to stop him. Edmonton may be able to slow him down, but they're not going to shut him down. Jamie Benn, the veteran, Tyler Seguin, they got the Finnish 5 or whatever it is in Dallas. And on the back end, they had Heiskanen come back as well. And Harley's been fantastic. So again, I just think that it's going to come down to goaltending, and Jake Ottinger is going to be better than Calvin Pickard or Stu Skinner. So I will say Dallas in 7. Where do you stand?
I'm actually taking the Oilers in 7.
Okay. And you know what? I flip-flopped. I did. And it's a coin flip. It really is. I think that the winner of the series will be the first team that wins the game on the road. So whether it's Dallas and Edmonton, whatever it is, because that's what they say, the first home team to lose a game, that's when the series really becomes something. So I think the first team to win a game on the road is going to end up winning this series.
Yes, and you know what? Because see, I mean, you know, and look, I'm a big fan of Pete DeBoer as a coach. Okay, I think he's done a great job, and especially especially his time in the NHL, and especially going back to his time in the OHL with the Kitchener Rangers. I thought he did a really good job.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with that. If you can do what you did at a junior level and just continue to do that going forward in your pro career, I mean, that's the sky's the limit, I think, right?
Yeah. No offense to the OHL and junior hockey, but the NHL is much more fun in my mind.
Oh yeah, no it is. Hey, the OHL and junior and all those leagues, they have their moments.
They do.
Have their moments. They do. But the NHL, it's just the cream of the crop.
No, it is. But don't you agree? The NHL is much more, honestly, it's not the OHL is not the NHL.
No, it's not. It's not. And there's a big gap, and there's a big difference on a whole bunch of different levels. Skill level is one thing.
Yeah.
Maturity is another thing.
Mm-hmm.
And lifestyle and everything else that goes with the National Hockey League, it's different. The talent level, again, though, you got to think about this, that the NHL is at the highest talent level I've seen in ever.
Yeah.
And it's just going to continue to get that way. So credit to the scouting staff of all the teams, but also credit to the leagues below the NHL for the development of these players. Credit to the parents too, years ago, putting their kids in, if they saw something with someone, they want them to live out their dream. They want them to continue with the passion that they have. And so these leagues are developing really young talent for the NHL to continue to thrive. So yeah, there may be a difference, but there's also that connection.
Oh, sure. Yeah, no, I agree with that. But I think when it comes to a following and a coverage, I think the NHL is much more of a fun league.
Oh, sure. No, absolutely. 100%.
Yeah. And what about Carolina and Florida?
Yeah, so I'm going to take the Panthers in 6. And the reason why is that they're the defending champions. This is going to be an intriguing series. I've been saying, half jokingly, that the Carolina Hurricanes haven't really paid much attention to them winning the first 2 series because they beat the Devils handily and then they beat the Capitals handily. But that's what they do. They quietly go about their business and they just keep winning. The way that they play in the system that Rod Brind'Amour has implemented into that club is incredible. I always think too at the end of each season, I know there's one coach of the year, and it's more than likely going to be Spencer Carberry of Washington, and deservingly so. But there should be, secondary coaches of the year with certain teams, and I think Rod Brind'Amour again should be up there with the top of the list of coaches of the year. So they're a good team. Seth Jarvis has been playing great. Sean Walker's been tremendous. Svechnikov has been awesome. Freddie Anderson, Ali, has been fantastic.
Former Leaf.
Former Leaf. So we've got him playing well, still playing. We've got Connor Brown still playing in Edmonton. Zach Hyman still playing. The list goes on and on. All these former Leafs having success outside of Toronto. But the key for Carolina, if they're going to really push Florida, Freddie Anderson, number one, has to be healthy. And injuries have dogged this guy for so long, but he's healthy now, so knock on wood, he stays that way. I feel, though, that the way the Panthers played against Toronto, Toronto didn't play well, especially in Game 5 and 7, but the Panthers played very well. And Paul Maurice has them playing at a very high level at the moment. And they know what it takes to win. They're not stressed. They're not pressured. 2 key X factors that we've seen already, and they were huge ones in Game 7 for Florida against Toronto. You and I would have been the X factor because the Leafs just didn't show up.
Yeah.
Seth Jones was one, and Brad Marchand another. Great deals, great acquisitions by Zito and the rest of the Panthers upper brass. But I just think they've been there, done that, Ali, and I really do feel that they will have the horses left in the tank, even though it's been a short turnaround, 2 days between Game 7 against Toronto and Game 1 against Carolina. I just think they have more in the tank, and they'll prove that in this series.
Yeah, that's my pick as well. Florida in 6. And I'd be okay. You know what? And I think I think I want to see another Edmonton, Florida final Stanley Cup.
That would be awesome.
Yeah,
it really would. And it'll just go to show you too. If those two teams do get in, again, they're on a path to get there. If they get in, what's the discussion going into each season? The Stanley Cup is the hardest trophy to win. If they make it back in together, the discussion will be these two teams are proving that, yes, the Cup is the hardest to win, but it's not as hard now. Well, it is still hard, but look what they've done. They're back in the Stanley Cup final like they were a season ago. So it can be done. And all these other teams, the 30 teams that will not make it and the 2 teams that will, you look at those 2 teams. And if it's Edmonton and Florida, say, yeah, they did it 1 year. They can do it again, just like Tampa did a number of years ago when they went back to back, etc. So I think that would be great. That's the final. That's the final that I'm hoping.
Me too. Me too.
Even though I have Dallas, I just think they're the better team. It would be great to see Edmonton because then look, we're guaranteed at least a final shot at finally winning the Cup back in Canada for the first time since '93. It's been too long, Ali. Too long.
Oh yeah. Well, so I guess so they can check. So we can check out Pucks and 7 for all the NHL coverage.
Yeah, go to youtube.com/@pucksand7. We had one out yesterday, and with Rachel Dory, and she shared some great insight on the Maple Leafs. She does some great work for Bet-Alytics, and she's on a podcast called Puck Social. So we're also running different things too today with that, and we're giving you our previews and our picks for each of the series, even though I spoiled them with you. And then, of course, I've got Sirius XM, the Hot Stove Show, every Saturday, and I'm going to do that again this Saturday on Channel 91. So, yeah, lots happening, Ali.
Absolutely, and there's lots of NHL coverage coming up, and and I can't wait to do another. I can't wait to do a season preview show with you, an NHL season preview show.
Yeah, that's going to be great, and who knows what's going to happen in this next month and change, whatever it is, however long it takes to get to that end of the season game of this 24-25 season. But this season has been awesome. And then I already can't wait to see what's going to happen in 25, 26. So yeah, let's book that and let's
do
get
it. Let's do it. Thank you. And yeah, we'll be back as well after the. And you know what? After the you know what I've also decided, right? And we're going to make that at the end of the. You know what? You know I'm a Jays fan too, but I haven't touched anything Jays during the playoffs.
Okay. Well, I think it's time you maybe start to do that at some point.
Yes. Since how about after the playoffs?
After the playoffs is good. Yeah, you got to focus, right? You got to maintain your focus on the league, on the NHL. Once that's done, then every other sport starts to matter.
Oh, yes. Yeah, actually, I guess I did do some. But, yeah, we'll be doing some J stuff as well. There'll be some of that as well, and absolutely. But I think during the playoffs, and I think during the playoffs, I think it's the NHL that kind of counts.
No, it is. And you know what? Just got to say this for you. Keep up the great work. You're doing amazing. I love listening, watching, whatever it is. And yeah, the content that you have is fantastic. So certainly I tip my cap to you and everybody else involved.
Thank you so much for listening and or watching Broadcast Map. To learn more about the show, please visit broadcastmap.ca. While you're there, subscribe to the newsletter so you never miss an update. Besides, it's free. Enter your email address and hit subscribe right on the homepage and at the bottom of all Broadcast Map posts.